Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. In this episode, I am joined by my dear friend Martha. Martha and I are discussing talking to your family members about NFP. And Martha actually has experience talking with both of her two sisters as well as her mother and sharing NFP with them. So we discuss her personal experience with that, as well as some tips for when you are approaching those conversations within your family. Let's get started. All right. Well, we are welcoming Martha to the podcast. Martha, thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be here, Ellen. This is fun.
I'm really excited to talk about today's topic. You have some fantastic experience in it. I have no experience in it. Talking to your family members about natural family planning. This is awesome.
Yes, I come from a family where there are lots of women, so most of my conversation comes from experience comes from my conversations with them. So hopefully that can help some other people start some good conversations too.
That is so perfect. So Martha, could we just start out with just give a little intro to yourself and yeah.
Sure. Well, I was a Protestant growing up of many flavors. And I met my husband and became Catholic, but I wasn't fully catechized, I don't think. I think that's something you kind of grow into as you become Catholic. When you're a convert, it's not like this instantaneous slam, your whole life is Catholicism now. It takes time for that to seep into all those spaces in your life. And so when I got married, I was the good little Protestant girl, and I got on birth control right away because that's what you do. Mm-hmm. And it took quite a few years, but then I was reading and I was learning. So I tried to start charting on my own with symptothermal. And that was rocky. I did not trust it. I had a hard time. I'm a scientist, so just the vagueness of the method was really difficult for me.
And that's something we have mentioned a couple times on this podcast is like, please don't try to learn to chart on your own. Like get an instructor. It's so important. There are so many different facets to it. And
exactly.
And you'll have so much more confidence when you have an instructor.
Yeah. So I definitely didn't trust it. So I was off the hormonal birth control, but I was not completely, I guess, kosher with my NFP yet. We were still using other methods to ensure we did not get pregnant. I was still scared. Then I had a dinner group that was at my church. So you had 4 couples and they would take turns hosting dinner over a semester. So in the fall you would switch. So once a month you would have dinner with them. And one of the couples, they were older and they invited my husband and I over by ourselves. And we were like, ooh, special. Ooh. And they sat us down with a glass of wine and we were sitting around and talking. And then she turns and looks at me and she goes, so what do you know about NFP? And I went, okay, I've heard of charting and I've tried a little bit, but it's not really a big part of my life right now or what we do. And she said, well, there's a free class at the cathedral. You might want to go check it out. And it was given by a nurse who was a Crichton practitioner. So I went, I took the free class, I got trained 100% in, like the science matched up, having the training was amazing. And now I have 3 children and they're all 3 years apart and all were intentional yeses through our discernment process. And I mean, that completely changed my perspective on NFP once I was trained.
Right.
And I had help. And I also have had experience with an NFP doctor, a Crichton
awesome.
doctor. So, and they actually looked at my chart on my first visit and diagnosed me correctly with 2 separate health issues that were able to be resolved within like 2 appointments. It was mind-blowing. Even from a science perspective, you just look at that and you go, you can take this piece of paper with stickers on it and turn around and say, we're going to test you for this and we're going to blood test you for that. And depending on the results, we will probably, hopefully resolve all your charting issues. And you're just like, what?
Like,
What just happened here? Yes. So, I mean, I think I've had the best of all the NFP worlds in my experiences, you know, the ability to chart well, have good training and have medical help through my charts and have healthy children. And, you know, just I've had a really good NFP experience. So
that's fabulous. And I love that. I think you and I actually had sort of a similar experience. Like I tried to learn to chart on my own first and I was so not comfortable.
Not a good idea.
Which is why I'm a huge proponent of please find an instructor.
Yeah, and whatever method it is, I don't think there's a real ranking in like this method's better than that method. I think it's more that this method fits my lifestyle and my needs and my medical needs right now better than the other methods. So
absolutely right. There is not one best method, but there is a best method for each woman, right? And each lifestyle
and each time of life. Like
right.
That changes too. So if you get trained in one method and you're like, this is awesome, and then things start breaking down, don't stick with that method. Find a new one.
It's okay. You can go change methods.
Yes. And I think that's a huge thing. But conversations with family, oh my gosh. My first one was with my mom. I'm the oldest daughter. So I was the first one married. And when I let her know that I was going off of birth control, she freaked out.
Oh my gosh.
She was so scared for me. She was worried that I was using the rhythm method, that I was just counting days and I wasn't going to be able to avoid conception with any sort of regularity. She thought I was going to have all the babies without discernment, without taking into account my health or the health of my marriage or my mental health. Like she was really scared.
And honestly, that's a valid concern for her too. Without knowledge of the science behind NFP, I can understand why she would be concerned.
Well, and all of us in my family were surprises. So we were four kids, and none of us were discerned. We were all surprises in ways that were not positive. So they turned out to be positive, like they love us all. And
of course,
we were always aware growing up that it had been, birth control failure in different ways. And that my mom was very open with us about that. So it was difficult for her to see me then going away from this safety net that she considered essential to the health of my marriage. Because for her, if you're not available to your husband all the time, then your marriage can completely collapse. And unfaithfulness and disconnection, and like there's this idea of the husband needing this specific type of affection at all times. So breaking from that and be like, no, my husband and I express affection in more than one way, and he's on board. Like he's okay with this. This is a good thing. Like we get times that are off and times that are on, but it's not like the times that are off we're never talking to each other or like, oh no, you can't touch me at all. Like
okay, sex is off the table, so we're gonna go sleep in different bedrooms.
I know. I don't know what she was thinking, but it's just a different kind of relationship.
Sure.
When you go from being constantly available to discerning together, like there's a different dynamic there. I'm not the gatekeeper of
Right.
the family fertility. It's a collaborative effort. And so, you know, if he's really interested and it's a we are fertile time, I just look at him and say, hey, are you ready to have another baby? Because we need to talk about this. And he'll be like, whoa, where did that come from? And I'm like, well, this is what this is, right? Yeah. Like, you want to go have sex, then there's that possibility.
There's a possibility of another baby in the family.
Like. Exactly. And just that reminder of, hey, we need to discern this. If you're wanting to move this direction, we need to talk, can kind of, oh yeah, I need to pull back a little bit. Let's actually talk for a minute. And that doesn't mean I'm gatekeeper. That just means I'm reminding him.
Sure.
Of
right.
our mutual responsibility. And that's, I think, something that my mom didn't understand at first. And she's may not still completely understand it because that's not how her marriage works. But at least the two of us have talked about it.
Right. Well, and I think something else that you're touching on that doesn't even have to do with your conversation with your mom is that I love, I just want to highlight is like, you're not the gatekeeper. No. This is like a conversation and an undertaking with you and your husband. And like, I mean, NFP wouldn't work if just one spouse is on board. Like, you gotta have both spouses. Like, that would not work.
No. That would be really rough. Yeah. But my mom's not the only one in my family who I've talked to, which is the fun part. I have two sisters and they're younger. So when they would get married, you know, they would get on birth control. And my next sister in the list, she was the one who she started having major side effects from her prescription from the hormones. And she was just searching for other options. And it's like, oh, hey, hi, like, I've got an option. I'm not on birth control. And she's like, what? Why are you? But you're not pregnant. And so there was that conversation, and just the fact that there was another option was huge. And we didn't really get into the discerning and the spiritual side as much because she really wasn't open to it. Like, that wasn't what she needed. She needed the practical, like, nuts and bolts. Like, this is how it works. And, you know, I'm a science person. So she's like, you wouldn't use it if it didn't work. And I'm like, that's right. You know, I wouldn't use it if it didn't work. And the fact that I have been successful helped a lot. But again, she was worried about, you know, marriage health, and because she was taught the same lessons as my mom and didn't have a different perspective. But at least I could send her toward those fertility awareness methods that are now really mainstream and kind of get her moving in that direction so she could at least see another option.
Right. And that's all we can do, right? We can introduce, we can show people, we can share our own success stories and why we appreciate and love NFP, why we use it. But, you know, it's not our job to take them by the shoulders and say, okay, you got to use this.
Well, and there's another part of it that you have to realize that some people have medical conditions that are treated with birth control. So even if someone's on a birth control, that doesn't necessarily mean they're anti-NFP, especially if there's something you don't know. And I think that's important to remember, that it is a very private thing, that even if you're opening up to someone else, you don't know everything about what they're going through. And especially with my sisters, because there's another one.
We have more stories.
I know, there's more stories coming. That even what I hear is only part of the story. Even within my family group, like, their marriage is a private thing. I'm not going to know everything. And I can't tell them what to do. That's
Right.
really important.
Yes, we cannot tell anyone exactly what they need to do. We can't force anyone to do anything.
Exactly. And realizing that even within the Catholic community, there's a huge range of views on NFP and how it should be used or shouldn't be used, and how even the medical uses for hormones and how they should be applied, and realizing that you don't know everything about them either.
Right. And it's not our place to judge. It's never our place to judge.
Yeah.
But it is our place to share our experience, share what we
There
know.
you go.
And open up the conversation.
Yeah. And that's how sister number 2 gets in the picture.
All right. Sister number 2. I love this.
Sister number 2, she is my healthy sister. She wants no pharmaceuticals. She wants organic foods. She wants everything just as pristine as you can be. She's my Norwex sister. She's my, she just doesn't want, she wants everything all natural. And that's her lifestyle choice. We're all different in our family. We're okay with that. But she didn't like the fact that there were hormones in birth control. So she was looking for, again, a non-synthetic option, a natural option. So I was like, hey, have you heard about NFP?
I just love how that's the conversation started, right? Hey, have you heard about?
Well, and using those fertility awareness models and saying, hey, this is the fundamental science behind it. I take one step further. It's integrated with my faith. But you don't have to be Catholic to do this. This is something that you can benefit from just because it's science and it's real. And so she was interested in it because of that. And the conversation went pretty well. But as of now, these conversations are years ago. I still don't know what my sisters are doing now, because that's not my business. I'm not going to go call them up a week after I say, hey, here's a website. Hey, have you heard of this? Here's a resource. When they're sharing something with me, I'm not going to go back and be like, hey, did you decide to use that? Have you found a practitioner? Like, if they come to me and say, hey, I'm having a hard time finding an instructor, I'll help them. But if they don't come back to me and ask a question, I'm not hunting them down to find out what they've chosen. That's not healthy.
Right. And again, I mean, I think we've mentioned it a couple of times. It's just not our place. Like, our place is to introduce and share. And obviously we would love for the entire world to be using fertility awareness and, understanding their bodies. And there's such great stuff to it, but it's not our place to go knocking on everyone's door and go look at their chart and make sure they're doing it.
No. And even especially with my sisters, they know where I stand now. They know what I do. They know the resources I have. They know where I'm comfortable talking. They know that there's a spiritual side to it for me, that it's integrated with my faith. They know that my husband and I seem to have a healthy marriage, that our children are spaced out because we chose that for our health reasons. We know, they know a lot more about my journey than I know about theirs. And I have to be okay with that, because what I'm trying to do is share with them that I have another option, and that it is healthy for me and my family and my marriage and my life. And it's not scary, and it's not, some fringe thing that's nobody else can look into. It's only because I'm Catholic. Well, yeah, that's how I was introduced to it, but man, am I glad I was introduced to it. Oh my gosh. So it's difficult to have that start up and then not demand openness in return. You open yourself up to those conversations, to almost share this really private part of your life, and then you have to be okay with sitting back and going, well, that's it.
Right. Right. You've done your part. You've shared. And if they want to reciprocate, that's awesome. And maybe that's not until a decade later. Or maybe
Exactly.
it's not ever. But you've done your part. You've shared.
I've opened the door.
Exactly.
That's all I've needed so far, is I've opened the door. And then and they do ask me questions, and I've had friends ask me questions. I've had other Catholic moms ask me questions, and I don't know everything.
Sure. Nobody does. Who knows everything? God does.
Yeah, God does. But the point is, I'm not afraid to have the conversation, even if I don't know everything. And
right. It is okay to answer a question with, you know what?
I don't know.
I actually don't know.
I can ask this person, or I can talk to that person, or I know there's this really good resource. So yes, you do have to be educated enough to kind of point people
Right.
one way or the other. So before you like dive into 10 gazillion NFP conversations, make sure you know at least enough to feel confident that you could send someone toward a resource.
Right. Put a couple resources in your back pocket, or at least like the name of an instructor,
Yes.
just have a couple of those like ready.
Yes. And an instructor who's willing to answer an email question from a non-client, or something like that. Because that's some instructors, they can only handle so many people. So you also have to talk to them too, because they're people.
Feel free to send them over to the Charting Toward Intimacy Instagram.
Exactly.
I'm happy to answer questions.
Yay. So yeah, I guess the biggest thing for me was, if I do start talking to somebody about it, I start from, what do they know? It's like, what do you know about NFP? Just like the lady who introduced me to the course that got me charting did for me. It's just like, what do you know about it? And so if you do feel like to talk to somebody, just not just going into like this big, huge personal story right away. Just start with an opener that's like, well, what do you know? Like, have you heard about this?
You don't want to go in with a lecture. You don't want to go in with like, okay, here's my 10 bullet points that I have to tell this person. But I love that, right? Start with a question. Find out what they know about NFP, because it's going to be a completely different conversation if you ask, hey, what do you know about NFP? And the person says, well, it's like looking at a calendar and counting days and it doesn't work, versus somebody saying, well, there's something about charting and looking at signs and I don't really understand that part, right? Those are two very separate conversations.
Yes, exactly. And being aware that you're not going to have the same conversation twice. I mean, my family is...
I love it. You have 3 completely different conversations with all of the women in your immediate family. And that's amazing.
Yes. And that's, that's not even... We grew up together. We have shared experiences. We went to the same faith communities when I was young. Now I'm different, but when we were little, we had so many shared experiences, but realizing that doesn't define everything, and that leads into something else. You don't have to just talk to your family about NFP, especially if you need support. Like if your family isn't supportive, I mean, I can't go ask my mom a charting question. She has no clue. And my sisters, if I'm having a rough time one month because it's just like, man, my phase 2 is so freaking long this month. What is going on? I can't really tell my sisters that, because they don't, that it doesn't translate for them. But I have people I can talk to, and those people are people I've grown to trust and build relationships with outside of my family. And that's where I get my support from, not from, even though my sisters are great, I love my mom, that's not where I get my NFP support.
Right. And I think that's an issue that it's pretty common, is like, okay, I grew up with my sisters, or members of my family, and I'm really, really close to them, but we actually don't agree on this NFP topic. I've tried to bring it up, and usually I go to my sister for support. You don't have to have your sister for support for this issue, and that is okay.
It's hard, but it's
yeah.
okay. Like it's tough to realize that there's something you can't completely connect with, especially with people you've spent your whole life with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't support out there.
Right. And that support is really important. Like, please don't be on an NFP island. That is so hard. And I started on an NFP island, and I did not like my island. It was terrible.
No. You need to have people you can trust with like the hard stuff, like not just the happy days, like the yay, I am gonna have a baby, this is so exciting, but the tough days, like,
right,
man, this is so rough, everything's going wrong, my health is screwed up, everything's just completely blown out of the water, I can't handle this. You need somebody that is going to stick with you through both of those kind of moments, and
exactly
building those relationships and being open and finding somebody who has a similar mindset about NFP too, because remember, Catholics aren't all the same. Oh my goodness.
You're not just going to like find a Catholic and be like, oh, you're Catholic? That means you use NFP and have all the same opinions as me. Great. That's not exactly true. It might happen once in a blue moon.
Yes, like you.
like me and Yolanda.
Exactly. But
go back and listen to that episode.
First one. Awesome. But yeah, I was almost at that coffee date. Now I'm kind of glad that I wasn't there, because so much has grown out of it.
I know. I have no idea if we would have jumped into NFP if you had been at that coffee date. I don't know.
I don't know, but we're here now, and this works too.
Thank goodness for that coffee date. I mean, honestly, this podcast probably came as a fruit from that same coffee date.
Oh my goodness. Holy Spirit moving. Here we go. You can't.
I mean, if you don't know what we're talking about, the second episode of this podcast, What I Wish I Knew with Yolanda, I give a little intro as to what exactly we're talking about. So please go back and listen to that second episode.
Exactly. It's a good episode too. It was a good one. And don't forget the first one with your husband. That one was really cute too. I like that one.
My poor husband. I'm like, okay, you got to go do this episode with me. He's like, what?
It turned out really well too. It was great. But yeah, I don't know. Just there are so many different ways that you can talk to family, and just not having an expectation that you're going to immediately change everyone with your experience.
Is huge. I mean, that goes for any conversation you are having about NFP with anybody. And that's this whole series. And I think we've touched on that a lot, is like, you are not going to change their mind in the first conversation that you have. I mean, maybe you might.
You plant a seed. The first conversation is to plant a seed, to say, hey, there's another way. Hey, I'm been successful in this. No, it's not easy, but it's good. Like there's so many levels to NFP awareness that, if you're just starting out, your conversation may be a lot different than the one that I had with the woman who had 4 children and was sitting in her back patio with a glass of wine,
right.
Her level of awareness of what I didn't know, she just knew so much about what I didn't know, but she didn't force it down my throat, and she didn't make me feel uncomfortable or judged. It was just, hey, what do you know? And there's this free information, you should check it out, and if you have any questions, you're welcome to come back and talk to me, but just check it out.
And that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I want to just like kind of consolidate everything that we have talked about, because there's like so many fantastic tips and we chit chat so much. I just want to I want to give someone like a punch list.
Oh my gosh. Go for it.
So, all right. When you're talking to a family member about NFP and they come to you and it's kind of like this perfect opener, right? One of your sisters is like, oh my gosh, I'm having all these side effects and it's awful. I'm trying to find another way. Wow, what a fantastic opener. That's like, oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
You start with what's going to resonate the most with that person.
Yes.
You have 3 different women in your immediate family, and you had 3 very different conversations with them. And you started that conversation with what resonated the most. And that's beautiful, because there are so many different facets to NFP.
Yes.
And maybe you listening have a very devout sibling, but just isn't on board with the NFP thing. You might not want to start with the science. You might actually want to start with the theology on it, right?
Yes.
You know your siblings the best. I mean, you grew up with these people. And so finding what's going to resonate the most, that's your door in. I think that's beautiful and that's key. And you did a fantastic job with all of your conversations.
I'm telling you, sometimes it's not you that's talking and you've got some help in the background. The Holy Spirit helps a lot. So making sure you have your knowledge base, but then not like pushing to force the conversation.
Absolutely.
Is
not
huge.
Having an agenda.
Yeah. You're not going to be, it's not you that's working in that moment. That's not you at all.
Right. And remembering that any of these conversations you have with anyone else on NFP, it's not you, it's not your agenda. It's God's, it's the Holy Spirit, and allowing that to come into your conversation, allowing the Holy Spirit to give you the words.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And then I think one more like huge tip that we kind of talked about is opening it up with a question, finding out what they know about NFP before you start launching into it. That's huge.
It is. If you don't know where to start the conversation, you really can't have a productive conversation. And if they don't ask a specific question, if it's more vague, then not knowing where they are means that you can't really connect to where they are. So
absolutely.
Letting them talk first.
And that's hard for us.
It is, because you're so excited. You're like, oh, this is the best thing ever. Like, you really need to know about this. But you have to like take a breath. Okay, where are you? What do you know about it? And just letting that knowledge come out in pieces instead of as a waterfall is kind of essential, because you can't really absorb it if it's in this huge stream, Right.
I'm imagining like waterboarding someone with NFP. That wouldn't work.
No, not at all.
Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And I think too, just to end on like finding some support, even if it's not within your family. You may be listening to this episode and hoping to, change the mind of someone in your family so that you can have support with NFP. And just understand that might not happen.
Exactly.
And it's not our job to change someone's mind. But what is so important for you as a user of NFP is find someone besides your husband or wife that can support you. Obviously your spouse is going to be a huge support.
They're the main support.
They're the main support. But sometimes you just need to vent to somebody else and just, complain about how long your phase 2 is.
Just share experience to say, hey, this method isn't working. And they go, well, have you tried this other one? Or, to have someone to call when, there is a surprise in your chart and you're like, wait a minute, where did that come from?
Why did this happen?
And not necessarily the instructor, because they're technical support, but
Right.
you also need like more of an emotional support person, a spiritual support person, somebody that can pray for your marriage, somebody that can support you in what you're trying to do, because it's not easy. It's not all sunshine and roses and hey, we're all like, everybody's natural and happy and everything works all the time and everything's
and there's
great.
just a rainbow following me around.
And phase 2 is just this beautiful time of connecting with your spouse through intellectual conversations
and board games.
And
always
and holding hands, you know, like,
and holding hands.
You know, it just no. There's real struggle there, and so real support is important. And I think that's a great point.
Oh, I think that is a perfect spot to end.
Yeah.
Martha, thank you so much. This has been such a fruitful conversation. I am so excited about this episode. I think a lot of people are going to get some great tips from this. Thank you so much for being here, Martha.
It was great to talk to you, Ellen. It was so much fun. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. I hope that you are now empowered to go and talk to your sisters, brothers, family members about natural family planning. And if you're not, that's okay. This is a difficult topic to bring up, especially within the family. And so just know that when the time is right and you want to have that conversation, God will provide you with the words to say. This has been a super fun series that we've been doing, talking to blank about NFP. And I know a lot of our listeners have reached out to me with suggestions for more blanks to fill in. And I am working on putting those together in a second part of this series sometime in the springtime of 2021. So get excited for that. If you have more ideas, please feel free to share them with me on Instagram at Charting Toward Intimacy. That's toward with no S, Charting Toward Intimacy. And I have a favor to ask you. If you have a friend who you think would benefit from any of the episodes that we've done before, or just this podcast in general, would you please share the podcast with them? We would love to spread the word about Charting Toward Intimacy and help more people expand the natural family planning conversation. Until next time.